So I've been asked to make an end table by a customer of mine. The customer wants it, it said it could be round or rectangular square, roughly 12 inches both directions. So I decided, I've never done a round table, so I think I want to try that. Since he didn't care, I think that'll be a good time to try it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a form to set up this table. Now what he wants is we're going to use butternut for the wood, and he would like epoxy to be a part of it. I've done some previous pieces for this customer, and we used epoxy, butternut, walnut. It's all in his office. So he's familiar with the work and how it looks, and requested an orange epoxy because it matches some artwork in his office. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build this form up, get it ready for epoxy, and see if we can make this thing look pretty cool. If you've seen any of my other videos, I do a video where we make a charcuterie board and I show how to make a form for it, for epoxy. This is going to be a very similar technique. What I have in this, for this is some pieces of melamine. They have all been previously used. You can see this actually has some concrete on it for a concrete tabletop I did. They all have pocket holes drilled in the back. I use the pocket hole screws to build these forms, and so I'm going to just utilize what I already have. These are all a little bit over 12 inches, and what I'm going to do is just going to stagger them all so that I get the size I need. I am actually going to target 13 inches for this. That'll give me a little bit extra to cut out and position things the way I want. So the first thing I need to do is wrap some of these forms with tape. So I have this tuck tape. I bought it on Amazon, and you can see I've already covered this base. I reuse this table over and over again. It's got tape all over it. I knock off all the extra epoxy that drips, and then I reuse it. Every once in a while, as it sits here, maybe not getting epoxy, sometimes the tape gets scuffed up, and so I felt I needed to recover some areas. There were also a few spots where maybe some of the unmixed epoxy had dripped off the bottle and had some nasty spots on the top, so I wanted to cover those up. So what we're going to do is start wrapping these. Now I need to get a razor blade to cut this. So I'm going to get a razor blade and we will start cutting. Okay, so I have a little razor blade here. It just makes things a lot easier when you're working with this tape. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just start covering it with tape. Now I want it to go down and cover up the bottom of the piece of wood, and I want to extend it out the ends. So, man, it's stuck. There we go. Try to do this without getting too many creases in the tape. It just turns out a lot nicer. And all you really got to do is hit it lightly with the razor, and it cuts off really nice. If you don't do that, you may have a bit of a mess of tape. So I'm just going to fold it over, try to get a real nice bottom here. And now you got the sides. It's almost like wrapping a present. You fold one side down and do that a different way here. And just keep folding it down and over itself. So you can just get the corners nice and wrapped up. Do it on both ends. Now I want to also Do another piece towards the top here. And it's stuck on itself. All right. Okay, so we have that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by attaching one. When I do that, I just use silicone. This is just window and door, just nothing special here. And I run a bead the whole way down the edge. Now this is it's actually clear, but it starts out white, so it'll dry clear. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it right. I don't want to do that. Right on the edge here. And I'm going to screw it in. Silicone should ooze out. That, to me at least, it tells you you got a good seal underneath, so we won't have any leak problems. And I just like to double check, make sure there's a good bead down in there. Yeah, that should be good. So once this dries, be ready to start cutting pieces. I'm going to lay them at kind of an angle so as to create some kind of cool looking spots for the epoxy. So we'll see how that turns out here, but give it a day or so and I'll be ready to pour. I have this piece of butternut, and I also have another piece laying on the floor down here that was cut off from some other stuff I did for this customer. And I'm going to try to plan out exactly what part of this board to use. I want to, if I just set this in there, there's not going to be enough epoxy. It's going to be mostly wood. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm actually going to make it cut to fit into one of these corners, and then maybe have some epoxy over here, some coming across the middle, and then some back in here with wood in between. So that's kind of what the plan is. I need to figure out where I'm going to start and where it's going to go to. So this piece has a big split here, so I need to try to avoid that. And then on this side, it's got this big divot. I don't know. I'm going to stay away from that as well. So I think just using a square here is the right approach. This is just under 13. So I'm thinking maybe, I'm not sure exactly how wide I want to go here. Not halfway. So I'm just going to take a little section like maybe right here, and that's going to be into my corner. So I'm just going to draw this. The nice thing about using a square, come up just a little bit, is I can get that corner to fit nice. I just want to take a chunk right here. So I'm going to cut that right there, and then we'll see where we're at, and I'll just decide on the next piece after I have this one set in. Alright, so I cut this piece in here, and I set it in. It comes a little bit short on the ends, which is okay, because this is going to be a round table. Those will be cut off anyways, so it doesn't really matter. The next thing I'm doing here is I'm trying to figure out how I can utilize this piece in this opposite corner right here. I've kind of figured out that I want to cut it to here, go straight up to this crack and come across, and then it's going to come across right here. And it needs to end about right there. So it's going to be this section right here is going to get cut out, and that should fit in that opposite corner. It should give me a nice void right in the middle here that I can use epoxy in. I'm not, just with the pieces I have, there's not really any way for me to leave a corner. I wanted to kind of get a section of epoxy here and then a corner of epoxy, and my pieces are too wide, so it's just not working out quite right. So this will be fine. We'll cut this. I am also I have some leftover, big section of leftover pieces that I'm going to use to make a few coasters as well, matching coasters. So I will be making up another form. So in the coming videos, you'll probably see another form beside here, and that's what it's going to be. So I have the form made for the table. I've cut the pieces for that. So these pieces, this one's a little loose, as you can see. Doesn't really matter because I actually have about 1.5 inches in length extra on these. This one I actually got a little bit longer, and it fits quite well. So what we'll end up doing is I'll get all this little debris out of here, and I will pour this in and get it ready for the table. When I calculate epoxy, the way I do it is I try to get an average width measurement, and the way I do that is just every inch or so I measure how wide it is and then come up with an average. It's kind of hard to determine the volume that it's going to take for this. So we do that, and then I get a length and a depth, and you come up with a cubic inch measurement. Now, when you do that, you end up dividing that cubic inch measurement by 61. Whatever you get when you do that division is going to be the number of liters that you need in epoxy. If you want to measure in something other than liters, you just go online, you can plug it right into Google and do a search. You could convert, if you came up with 2.3 liters, you could convert it in Google just by searching 2.3 liters to gallons, and Google will do the calculation for you, or whatever measurement unit you want to use. You can do ounces or whatever. So that is actually all you have to do. It's pretty accurate. I I haven't had too much trouble with that calculation. So just a good little tip for you if you're calculating epoxy and not sure how much to use. All right, so we have these things ready to pour epoxy into. The first step we want to do when you do this, and this goes for any time you're doing epoxy, I highly recommend you pour in a light layer that coats all the wood. So all this live edge here, needs to be coated with epoxy, and there's a very good reason for that. You want to make sure you reduce the amount of bubbles when you pour the rest of it. The only way to do that is to seal that up. So we get epoxy, we make sure it covers all this. I want a thin layer, and all that's going to do is it's going to seal up this bottom so I don't have as much epoxy leakage underneath. If you don't do that, you'll lose epoxy up underneath. It's a waste, and so the one way to do that is to just make it so it covers these edges and then puddles at the bottom just a little bit, just to seal that up so the next pours stay confined to just this area here and not underneath the wood. What I found is the more epoxy you pour at a time, the more weight there is and the easier it is to flow. It just pushes itself out through the path of least resistance, which sometimes is underneath if you have a faulty form in one of the corners, or it'll find its way out that direction. So by sealing this bottom layer in, it reduces a significant amount of problems that you could have. I don't know about how much I need. I'm just going to pour a tiny bit in here. That should be plenty. And as you stir, you should be able to tell if you have enough just by when you look in there how much of the wood can you see through the epoxy as you mix it. If I want it so I can't see through this epoxy, I don't want to be able to see the wood very well. So this actually looks really good. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm just going to smear it on here. So I'm sure to cover everything. Let gravity do a little bit of the work. Alright, it's been a few hours since I poured this. Slightly tacky, but I think it's ready for the next coat. The instructions actually on the epoxy say maximum 1/4 inch at a time. Let it gel for about an hour, and then you can pour your next layer. So I think it's good enough. I'm gonna pour the next layer. here. Now, if you're trying to match coats, it's a good idea to measure this stuff. I don't really care that much. I just want it to be pretty solid orange. So in this instance, I don't think it's really necessary. Sometimes I do measure. Just depends on what I'm doing. But a lot of this I just do, it's kind of an eye test. I just see, is it how I want it to look? If it's not, add a little bit more. If it's, or if I take it too far, sometimes I have to add some clear to it. It's not the most ideal when that happens, but every once in a while, more coloring comes out of the container than you want. So I'm just going to dump this in. I probably could have used a little bit more. I'd say we're looking at about 1/8 of an inch right now. I also know that some of this is going to seep back in the cracks. So I probably could have went a little bit deeper, but it's okay. So this will be my third pour of the day. I'm going to try to go, I want to try to make up at least half of this orange. So I only have to do one more pour after this. And just like before, I'll dump a little bit in here. Stir it up real good. Now when I usually pop the bubbles, I'll use a heat gun. Occasionally I'll use a little butane torch. I don't have enough cords over here for the heat gun, so we're going to use the torch. Key is to keep it moving and not to scorch it. This is actually, this looks pretty good. Some of these may pop on their own. I don't like to take the chance though. And actually in this orange one, so we're down deep enough still that this probably won't matter. You'll never see these bubbles if they do remain. But I like to do it anyways. It's kind of fun to watch them pop. A little bit satisfying just to pop those out. Ooh. That's got a little, something fell off this torch. We'll just dig that out. All right, I'm ready to pour in the next layer of this orange. I have, I would say, 3/8 of an inch to go to get to the top. So I'm gonna mix up some more of this. I have a feeling it's gonna take a fairly full container here, so I'm just going to go with about 600 milliliters and see where it gets me. So I'm going to start mixing that right now. All right, we'll see how this stretches here. See if we can get it to fill the whole thing. Ooh, I see something. Get out of there. Let this settle a little bit. It's getting really close to the top. So while we're waiting, I want to show you the epoxy I'm using. It is called Super Clear Tabletop Epoxy. I bought it on Amazon. I've been using it for, I've used it for maybe 3 or 4 things now, and I really like it. It's really nice stuff, easy to work with, mixes pretty well. Sometimes you get epoxies that are way too thick, hard to stir. This is not one of those types of epoxies. It has a little bit of bubbles, but not really much worse than most kinds that you get. It's better than some. Actually was using a Total Boat tabletop epoxy for a while. I really liked it, other than it was so thick it was hard to stir, and it was instant bubbles everywhere. I mean, bubbles suspended throughout the entire thing, and so it really wasn't working great for me because of that. So I decided to try this, and it says it's certified food grade. It says highest UV resistance also on it. So if you want to pick it up, you can get it on Amazon. I will provide a link. It is an affiliate link, and you won't pay any more for it by using that link, but you will help me out by helping fund this channel. Every little bit counts. Makes me be able to keep bringing content to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. So I really appreciate it if you use the links, and go in and check out this Super Clear Epoxy if you're looking for some. So I see it starting to seep down through the cracks back in here. You can't really see it with the camera. Let me tilt it just a little bit. All right, you still can't see it. But it's down in this crack. I can see it running, which should take some of the depth out of this. However, it's actually almost overspilling at this end. So I think I've got enough in here. I don't want to overspill it too much, just because it just will take more to clean it up at the end. So I think we're gonna call this good. I'm gonna drain out this container that has the extra epoxy in it, so I can reuse it. And I don't think that's gonna, yeah, I think we're good. So I'm gonna pop these bubbles real quick. I got orange pigment all over my hand from stirring. All that powder just like fluffed up out of there. All right, so I'm gonna hit this with a little torch. Just pop some bubbles. And that should do it. So the next thing we'll do is flatten it on the surface planer, and then I'll cut it on the, I think we'll cut it on the CNC router to cut my circle, and then sand and prep it for finish. So we're getting close to being done. So I've given this a few days to dry now, and I am going to demold it, and then we can get on into planing this. So I gotta take the screws out. comes apart just as easy as that. Just a few light taps till it breaks free. So that's why I really like making these molds like this. Easy to break down. They're easy to break down. The hardest part is actually getting the piece to detach from the table. So usually I need to take that off with by driving a wedge, like a shim. We'll see what happens here. So just trying to see if I can knock it loose without driving a shim underneath it, but I don't think I can. Sounds like it came loose. We'll see here. Yep. So that's all there is to it. You can see I had a little bit of leak out underneath the bottom, but it wasn't too bad, and a lot of that is just due to doing that early pour in, real light layer that stops all of that weight from pushing it up underneath. So I think that this will be ready to go. I hope this isn't an issue right here. I didn't realize that was going to be where it was at. I think it'll be okay because we got a circle. I think I had some extra width here. We'll just have to make sure that gets cut off. So the next thing we're ready to do is go to the surface planer with this and just even up the top and even up the bottom. Okay, so this is starting to look pretty good. I think I can sand it the rest of the way. I cut it down. This still is a little bit of a concern because when I cut this edge, I'm a little bit worried that it's going to show. But we'll see where we're at. I think I can sand it the rest of the way though. The next step for this is actually cutting the circle. I'll plan that out and I'll cut it over on the CNC, which is right over here. So that's where we're going next. So I have the piece set in the machine here now. I changed the bit to a 1/4 inch down cut bit. And I'm going to cut this circle, which is going to have a 6 1/4 inch radius. That was the largest I could do, and still avoid that little defect in the wood over there. So it's going to be a little off center to the far end of the board, so I can avoid that. So I'll have a little bit of an extra chunk down here, and it's going to cut right to the edge on the other end. So we're going to load this G-code up into the machine and run it. See it cut through most of it. I built some tabs in so it would stay together and not, because I've had them where if you don't put the tabs in, once it busts loose, you can actually break bits. It's not good. So I think the rest of this I can trim up with the bandsaw. The tab, oh, that tab just broke and left a little chip, but I think I can fix that. I'm gonna end up having to route this anyways. I can always plane this a little bit more if I need to, but it cut pretty nice, and I think we can move on. I have this all sanded, and it is ready for finish. I'm gonna put a product called Odie's oil on it. It does a very good job of finishing wood. Seals it real well. It has an oil that works down into the actual wood. Really nice stuff. It makes the grain pop whenever you put it on something, so it really brings out the characteristics of the wood, which is something that I like to do when I'm finishing products. So that's what we're gonna do now, and it's a simple, you work it in with like a Scotch pad, and you let it set for a little while, and then you buff it out, and it's done. So when you open this jar, it's good to, it should kind of look like applesauce. Has a real nice smell to it. I like to stir it. Let me find a stick here. I think it helps to just stir it up. You see the thickness of it. This stuff is really nice. I highly recommend using it. I'll see if I can get a link for it here in the comment, or in the down below, and that way you can find it and get a hold of some. One thing I learned from this product, and a lot of it is due to their communication with me, you see people online will pour some on the surface and spread it around, and it looks all good, and it's great for videos. That's what I was doing when I first saw it. It's great for videos, but it's not the correct way to put it on. I actually was doing that. I tagged the company in one of my Instagram videos, and they actually contacted me with a direct message that said, hey, you know, you're wasting product. You know, the proper way to do this is to just dip a Scotch pad in and work it into the grain real well. And that way it builds depth down in, provides a better protectant, uses a lot less product. So I thought that was pretty good of a company to teach me a way to be more efficient and use less of their product. So I started doing that, and it's worked really well. This stuff does last a while, and it really is a great product. So I'm gonna work this in, and what you do is you want to wait, like, I forget what the actual instructions say. I want to say like 40 minutes to 10 hours to buff out, something like that. I usually give it a few hours, let it sit, penetrate. You always want to double check as it dries. Sometimes you get some spots that it's soaked in more, and you can go back and just reapply that. And so I actually just did that in one spot over there on one of the coasters. But we're just going to work this in, really work it into the wood, because we want it to penetrate real well. You can go right over top of the epoxy with it. It does not do anything to the epoxy. It doesn't hurt it at all. It actually, if you have any scratches from sanding, it kind of fills those in, or not. I don't know if it fills them in, but it definitely hides them. You can see we're getting a real nice color now. Try to get this to where the sun's not glaring from my window. Real nice color. Remember the first time I used this was on a countertop that I was doing for someone's house. They wanted there's like a wine cellar type of tasting room, and I got a piece of maple. Man, it was nice, and it's like a 5 foot wide piece of live edge maple. I don't know if I've seen one that wide since, but we actually cut it to fit between two barrels. I can actually show you a picture of it here, and once I worked this stuff in, I was sold instantly. It made characteristics in the grain come out that I didn't even know was there. Amazing, amazing. So just working this in. I see a few dry spots. My applicator's still got some product on it, and I'll let it sit for a little bit, and I'll check it again and see if it needs more applied. You know, I might wait like 20 minutes just to make sure, and then once I see that it still looks wet on everything, I'll call it good, and I'll come back a little bit later and buff it out. So it's a hot day today. I imagine that it won't take too long for this to set up and be ready to be buffed. So I'm just going to leave it like this, see what it's like when we come back, and then I can do the bottom side after the top side's done. Waited a few hours. They're ready to be buffed out, so I'm going to just take a towel and buff all these out. Then I'm going to flip them over and apply the Odie's oil to the other side. Just going to buff this out just like, almost like you're waxing a car. Alright, you can see, try to get it at different angles so the light doesn't reflect too bad. Really brings out the color in the wood. If you've never used butternut before, it's actually a really nice kind of wood to use. Now we're ready to reapply. I got it all buffed out. So it's going to go the exact same way I applied the first time. Okay, so I think I can let this sit for a little bit, make sure everything's soaked in and penetrated. And if all looks good, I will be ready to buff the last coat out here. So hopefully that's the next step. And I think it's looking pretty good. So we'll set this down and come back to it in a little bit. I'm putting 3 legs on this table, and I actually was kind of stuck this morning. I was looking at it trying to figure out, well, how do I figure out exactly where each leg goes? How do you divide a circle into thirds? And so I want to show you that real quick and how that's done. So the first thing you gotta do is establish a center point, which I established was right here. After you do that, you need to draw a line through the center and across. Okay. Once you have that line, you need to measure out half of the radius. So my radius was 6, so I'm gonna measure out 3. I make a mark. Actually, you need to measure out half the radius. We go out this side here because I already actually have the lines. You make a mark, half the radius. Then you take a square. Okay? You run that square along the line that you drew and bring a line out wherever that half the radius was, wherever that line intersects the side, that is going to be where one of your lines comes in. You do the other way here. You go out that half the radius. You line this up here with your line and bring it out here. And where that 90-degree line meets the side is where you're going to draw your one leg of the triangle. So you'll draw that out. That's 1/3 of the circle. Where it met over here, you draw that out. That's 2/3 of the circle. And then your other third is this line over here that we drew right off the start. Once you have those, you have the actual circle divided into thirds, and you can place the legs. Now, I want the legs crowded towards the center as much as possible. So all I'm doing is I'm lining up, making sure that line hits this corner on the inside and hits it on the outside. And that should get it pretty close to being how I want it. Do that with all 3 legs. Now I'm under the assumption that these legs were all made exactly the same. I did not make these legs, I purchased them. But those should all be centered on the circle now. I got that line intersects this corner and this corner. Oops. Intersects this corner and this corner, and this corner and this corner. So now I'm actually ready to mark the centers of my holes for my screws to go into this, to hold these things on. So I'm going to get a little center punch. So I'm just going to punch a hole, a dent right where each hole goes, and then I'll know where to drill. So that is that part. Now I need to pre-drill some holes. So I am, the holes that came in these legs are pretty small. And my top is a little under an inch. So I had to find a screw that would be 3/4 long, because I don't want to go through. And I also wanted it to be, I needed it to be about a number 8. Because of these holes that are pre-drilled. I maybe could have gone with a number 10, but I wasn't sure. I didn't have any number 10s here, so I had to go to the store, and I just had them give me some 8s. So what we're going to do is pre-drill these so that we have a pilot hole, and then we'll drive them in. So one thing I always do when I am putting screws through the top of something is I always mark my depth on my drill bit with a piece of tape, and that is my stopping point. Do not want to go past that point. So I just hold the screw up to it. And that should be good for that. There's one. Yep, pretty good. So there you have it. It looks like it's going to be a good height for a chair, like we planned. This is the only chair I have in here, so I can sit down beside it, see it from a couple different angles. So here's a picture of the table finished and in the setting it was intended for. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to take a look at it actually beside some chairs. It kind of looks a little bit small, but that is the size he requested for the space. So if you liked this video, please hit that like button down below, hit the subscribe button, ring that little bell so you get notifications when we get new videos out. And I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.